네, 지금부터는 기자분들의 질문을 받겠습니다.
Next, we'd like to take questions from the media. First, from the Korean side. Please state your name and affiliation before you pose your question.
네, 정준영 기자 질문 주십시오.
Please go ahead, Mr. Jeong-Jun-hyung. My name is Hong Jun-young of SBS. I have a question for President Park. Madam President, last month at Dresden, Germany, you've announced your unification initiative centering around the three main proposals for laying the groundwork for peace and unification, but North Korea flatly rejected and is continuing with its threats of provocation. In particular, North Korea is showing signs for an attempt at the fourth nuclear test. Against this backdrop, the two leaders said that there will be, at the opening statements, strong sanctions and against the post against North Korea by the international society, and they will not. The two countries will not tolerate a nuclear test. I would like to know what the president's evaluation is. Is there a possibility of North Korea actually carrying out the nuclear test? And if the provocations are continued, if we are to improve and move forward the inter-Korean relations, are you considering a more flexible measure to be taken against the North? Nextly, with regards to the U.S.-Korea transfer of the wartime command, or the OPCON, the two leaders have said that they will review the timing and conditions for transfer. And if the transfer schedule is pushed back again, have you discussed with President Obama specifically on when that timing will be? Yes, at the Korean government and also at the Defense Ministry, our assessment is that the North Korea is actually fully ready to carry out the fourth nuclear test. So it can actually carry out the test whenever it deems necessary. That is our assessment. We're not very certain of what that timing will be, but I think we believe that they are fully ready now. And this is a very tense situation. To come up with some flexible measure, that is your question. Actually, the Dresden Initiative is a case in point for win-win of the two Koreas and for improvement of the quality of life for the North Korean residents. It's indeed a flexible policy. But the North Korea is responding with threats of provocation and about carrying out nuclear tests. So this is a point that we really need to think seriously. With regards to the transfer of the OPCON, Korea and the United States have decided that the basic direction should be to strengthen the chorus combined defense posture. We believe that it should not incur any negative situations on the defense posture for the Korea. And therefore, against the heightening tension of the threats, currently, the timing is 2015. But we have agreed that we could revisit this issue about reviewing the timing and conditions for transfer. So currently, I don't think it is quite appropriate that I give you the exact timing or the conditions. But the authorities, the defense authorities of the two countries will be able to come to a coordination effort together. And that is what we will do to encourage the defense authorities to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam President. Mr. President, you have stated that you're teeing up sanctions on Russia, but the Europeans are divided on how far they want to go. Can you tell us what, if any, consultations you plan to have with European leaders to nudge them forward, and are you worried that this could delay the process? Also, Mr. President, at a time when your attention is needed on the Ukraine and other world crises, is it now time to throw in the towel on the Middle East peace effort, especially now that that Israel has dropped out of the talks? I also have a question for you, Madam President, and condolences on your country's tragic loss. Madam President, given that South Korea and Japan have important shared security interests in the region, what, if anything, can your government do to get past this ritual of bitter dispute over Japan's World War II militarist past? Thank you.
Well, with respect to Ukraine, the consultation with my European counterparts has been constant, not just over the last several weeks, but for the last several months. And, I have been deeply encouraged by the unity that you've seen between the United States, Europe, Canada, and many countries around the globe, uniformly condemning Russia's actions in annexing Crimea, uniformly condemning Russia further meddling in Ukraine and the destabilizing activities that are taking place in the south and the east. And both the Europeans and the United States have been consistent in calibrating sanctions that could provide a deterrent to the Russians, providing support to the Ukrainians, leaving open a path for resolving this problem diplomatically. Now, as I said yesterday, what we've seen since the Geneva Agreement is the Ukrainian government has been carrying out the terms of that agreement. It's introduced legislation providing amnesty to those that would lay down arms and exit from these government buildings that have been occupied. It has put forward a process for constitutional reform that ensures the rights of all Ukrainians. And it's a credible document, one that's been presented to the Council of Europe and is getting input throughout Ukraine, as well as from experts outside of Ukraine in constitutional reform. And so what you've seen is the government in Kiev doing what it said it would do. What we have not seen is Russia speaking out clearly that condemning the pro-Russian militias that have taken over these buildings and using its influence to de-escalate the crisis. So I'll be talking to the Europeans, not all of them, but some key European leaders again this evening, making sure that they share my assessment in terms of what's happened since the Geneva talks took place. As I said yesterday, we already have a series of additional targeted sanctions that are ready to go, and we want to make sure that we're consulting with them, assuming that we don't see any drastic changes in behavior on the part of the Russians. We'd like to see that, but we haven't assumed that. But what's also important is laying the groundwork so that if and when we see even greater escalation, perhaps even military incursion by Russia into Ukraine, that we're prepared for the sort of sectoral sanctions that would have even larger consequences. And one thing I should say about European leadership, they've been unequivocal in condemning Russia, and they have actually moved steadily when it comes to applying sanctions and consequences towards Russia. But there are a lot of countries inside of Europe, and they have a whole process that they've got to go through to deal with any actions that have significant impact on their own economies. And so there's some variation inside of Europe. That is as much of an issue as it is any differences between our assessments and theirs. And we want to work with them to make sure that we're coordinating as much as possible, because that's going to maximize our efforts. Last point, I think it's important for us not to anticipate that the targeted sanctions that we're applying now necessarily solve the problem. What we've been trying to do is to continually raise the costs for Russia of their actions, while still leaving the possibility of them moving in a different direction. And we'll continue to keep some arrows in our quiver in the event that we see a further deterioration of the situation over the next several days or weeks. As far as the Middle East is concerned, this is a problem that's been going on for 60, 70, 80 years. We didn't anticipate that we were going to solve it during the course of a 6 or 9 month negotiation. I think it's fair to say that one of my jobs as president is to worry about a bunch of different problems at the same time and not just pick and choose which problems that I have the luxury to worry about. It is still in America's interests, as well as Israel's interests and the interests of the Palestinian people, to see if we can resolve a conflict that is combustible. And so far, at least, what we've seen is some movement on both sides to acknowledge that this is a crisis long-running that needs to be solved. What we haven't seen is, frankly, the kind of political will to actually make tough decisions, and that's been true on both sides. And the fact that most recently President Abbas took the unhelpful step of rejoining talks with Hamas, is just one of a series of choices that both the Israelis and the Palestinians have made that are not conducive to trying to resolve this crisis. And I make no apologies for supporting Secretary of State Kerry's efforts, tireless efforts, despite long odds, to keep on trying to bring the parties together. There may come a point at which there just needs to be a pause, and both sides need to look at the alternatives. I've said in the past, and I will continue to repeat, nobody has offered me a serious scenario in which peace is not made between Israelis and Palestinians, and we have a secure, democratic, Jewish state of Israel, and the Palestinians have a state. Folks can posture, folks can cling to maximalist positions, but realistically, there's one door, and that is the two parties getting together, making some very difficult political compromises in order to secure the future of both Israelis and Palestinians for future generations. We have not yet seen them walk through that door. We will continue to encourage them to walk through that door. Do I expect that they will walk through that door next week, next month, or even in the course of the next 6 months? No. Are we going to continue to try to offer constructive approaches that could lead them to go ahead and take those steps? Absolutely, and I make no apologies for that. It's the right thing to do. It's important, and it's in America's national interests as well as the interests of the region and the interests of Israel.
한국과 일본이 여러 가지로 안보에서 이해를 같이 함에도 불구하고 이렇게 좀 여러 가지
Following this live news conference from Seoul, South Korea, President Barack Obama and the President of South Korea, Park Geun-hye, both leaders talking about the tragedy of the Seoul ferry disaster near Jindo, South Korea. Also talking about maintaining security in the region in the face of provocation from the DPRK and its nuclear program. The president at one point saying North Korea will get, rather I should say, threats will get North Korea nothing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the president saying the U.S. and South Korea stand shoulder to shoulder, really emphasizing the unity of the two nations against North Korea, saying that neither of them accept their refusal, quote, to accept a nuclear North Korea. Also saying, the president, that Pyongyang has to abandon any nuclear programs. President Park of South Korea weighing in, saying that that country believes that North Korea is fully ready to carry out a full nuclear test whenever it deems the appropriate time. We're going to bring you the other highlights. The president discussing Ukraine, the situation between Russia and Ukraine, possible sanctions, also discussing the Middle East peace process and where the U.S. stands on that. We're going to bring you both of those straight ahead right here.